Of course, please also know that we are recording this for the SA Child website. If you do not wish to be known on the website, then please change your name and do not put on your video, just for the poppy. But anyway, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our third international collaboration. Actually, it's the fourth, but it's only the third that I'm being with SA Child, and is a collaboration with the IAACD. I know it's beach weather out here in Cape Town. I'm not sure where everybody else is. I'm especially grateful to all those who are giving up the beach time. You can see I'm wanting to be on the beach here in Durban. But thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. We are going to have an amazing talk with some amazing speakers. So before we start today's webinar, I'd like to remind you that we are having a masterclass on the 29th of November on CVI. And this will be very interesting. We have got international speakers lined up for you, and of course, for 5 CPD points. It proves to be very interesting, especially very cheap for the money that you'll be spending. So please do join us. Webinars. Getting back to our topic around the transition. This is a worldwide phenomenon. Disabilities. And this issue is quite close to my heart, and it was in fact the topic of my PhD thesis. So I understand all the challenges that these people are facing. Today we will especially explore the challenges of autistic people. If I can just let everybody know that they prefer to be known as autistic individuals and not individuals with autism, because the autism is part of who they are. They were born with it and is part of their identity. So we speak about autistic individuals. And our first speaker is an autistic individual who is now qualified OT. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Lareika. I'm not going to do a bio on her because her story is about herself, and woven in between all the information that she's also going to be giving us about autism. So thank you, Lareika, for your time and for your presentation.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Sorry, I'm not good with multitasking. Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So, like you said, I am an autistic adult and an occupational therapist, and I'm the National Training Coordinator for Autism South Africa. So I get to teach people about autism all day, every day, which is a dream job. So I'm going to talk about autism and transitioning from childhood into adulthood. But I want to, because it's such a big topic, I can't cover everything in 20 minutes. Instead, I want to talk about how I would recommend us framing and thinking about transitioning into adulthood. So I'm going to come at it more from a philosophical angle. Okay, so I hope everybody knows what autism is, but from experience, I've realized we have to start at the beginning sometimes. So we know it's a group of complex neurodevelopmental disabilities, so it is a disability, and it's fine that it's a disability. Having a disability is not a bad thing. It's a lifelong condition, so something that's tricky for me as an autistic adult and somebody that primarily works with autistic adults is people think about it as a childhood condition, and there's a lot of emphasis and focus on autistic children, but it is a lifelong condition. And I think that we need to put more resources and attention into helping autistic adults. And it's a difference in brain. This is what we mean when we say neurodiversity. So we'll talk about that. Autistic people experience the world differently. So we know we have social differences, we have sensory differences, need for order and routine, communication differences, executive functioning differences, and autistic people have special interests. And when we're going to talk about it as a spectrum, then we're not talking about it as spectrum from high functioning to low functioning or from being a little bit autistic to being very autistic, but instead you can fall at different aspects of these characteristics. For example, I am a speaking autistic person, so I don't need a lot of support in terms of communication in that aspect, but I am extremely sensory defensive, so sensory sensitive. Um, I need quite a bit of accommodations related to that, where somebody might be non-speaking, but they might be really good at understanding social nuances, for example. Okay. And because neurodiversity is a buzzword, I want to talk about what we mean when we say neurodiversity. So this is what I'm talking about, that I want to talk about the philosophy of autism. Neurodiversity isn't a diagnosis, it's a model, it's a way of thinking about these types of conditions that say that we have more than 8 billion people in this world. Not everybody's going to have the same brain, and that doesn't mean that something went wrong or something bad happened, but instead having diversity in brains can enrich the human species. Having differences in way people see things and think and feel and experience the world can contribute to the richness of the human experience. So the focus is on acceptance and providing support, and that's what I want to focus on when we talk about transitions. And this includes conditions like autism and dyslexia and ADHD. And this fits very nicely with your social model lens. So I come from the world of healthcare, and your focus would be very individualistic and very much on the individual you're seeing in front of us. But I want to challenge a little bit when we're thinking about transitions. The social model lens says that the world isn't made for people with disabilities. So yes, autism is a disability and there's some real challenges in it of itself in terms of being autistic, but that's compounded by trying to navigate a world that's not made for you, that doesn't understand you, that doesn't accept you, that doesn't accommodate you. And we want to shift the focus to think about the environment as well. And that aligns with the terminology that we use, where we think about, instead of functional labels, where saying somebody is high functioning or low functioning, we're saying that somebody has high support needs or somebody has a low support needs. So I'm an autistic person with low support needs. So that's that focus on not judging the individual, but thinking about the support they need from their environment. And I want to emphasize, when we're thinking about autism in this way, whether a person is speaking or non-speaking, whether they can work full time or they need 24-hour care, every autistic person deserves respect, understanding, and the right to be seen as a whole, complete human being, and the right to be supported and accommodated, just because we're human beings. And in this framing of support with disability, there's often a emphasis on independence. And when we're thinking about transitioning into adulthood, there's a big emphasis on independence. And I want to challenge that a little bit as well. We have this traditional idea of independence where the expectation is that the person needs to be productive, that they need to be independent, that they need to be able to do things on their own without help. And this might look like in disability, like living alone, being able to complete tasks without assistance, to be able to communicate without support, and manage your daily activities without aid or a caregiver. Independence can be very empowering for some people, but if we overemphasize independence, then we can leave people behind. It often reflects an ableist idea that being fully self-sufficient is the ultimate goal, which for a lot of people is unrealistic, unnecessary, or it's not what they want to do. And that can leave people quite isolated. Oh, sorry, now I've skipped a slide. Let me see if I can go back. Yes. Instead, I want to bring the idea of interdependence, which recognize that all of us as human beings, we need each other. None of us are independent. We all need each other. We all need support sometimes, and we all have unique but particular specific things that we can contribute to our communities. So we recognize that connection and collaboration is part of being human. So in disability, interdependence might look like assistive devices or having a support person like you're going to meet Mark, relying on your community, your family, or your peer support, advocating for accessible environment that allows equal participation, and recognizing support relationships as valid and valuable and not a failure. Interdependence doesn't mean this person is helpless, but it's about still having human dignity, choice, and autonomy, even if you're not independent. You can still be respected, you can still have dignity, you can still have choice. And I feel like in disability, we must sometimes have more of a focus on those aspects and not just on independence. So if we're going to look at it with independence, we're focusing on people doing things alone, but interdependence, we people can do things with support and we can support each other. In terms of our narrative, we see with independence, we see success as being self-sufficient. With interdependence, we see success as access, support, and autonomy. With independence, we see needing support as a failure or weakness, where with interdependence, we can see it as valid, valuable, and necessary for a lot of people with disabilities. With independence, the assumption is that everybody should be completely independent, where with interdependence, we can recognize that everybody relies on other people. With independence, we see the barriers as the person that needs help, where with interdependence, we look at those environmental barriers. With independence, we have this individualistic mindset, every person for themselves. With interdependence, we have this Ubuntu, community orientated and relationship focused model. Okay, for example, if you think about independence, then we want somebody to use speech as communication. Where if we think about interdependence, it's okay to use alternative forms of communication, your AAC. Those types of communication is still valid. So if we only focus on independence, we can isolate people with disability and devalue the support that they need or prefer. But if we embrace interdependence, we can promote inclusion, respect, and equality. It says that it's okay if we need others, and it's okay if we all contribute in different ways. Interdependence is the reality of being human. In disability justice, it's about choice, dignity, and inclusion, with support when and if you need it. So if we're going to talk about transition, I know that's what we're supposed to be talking about. So shifting from school age to your adulthood, for a lot of autistic people, because we see autism as a childhood condition, there's not a lot of services available. And autistic people can so-called fall off the cliff as services disappear. So we have to be clear about what the problem is. The problem isn't that we have autistic adults. The problem is that we lack support services, we lack inclusive environments, and that there's a lot of stigma and misunderstanding around autism. So in terms of these barriers to education and employment, so some autistic people would want to go to tertiary education. I went to tertiary education, and it's really can be quite a difficult experience and inaccessible if you're not accommodated. But also in terms of employment, I work with a lot of autistic adults that have a tricky time with employment. Even I know there's a lot of emphasis on if you teach an autistic person certain skills, then they'll be able to be employed. But I don't think that that's the reality if you speak to autistic people. I know a lot of autistic people that I work with have amazing tertiary qualifications, work in careers where people are needed, like IT. And still they have a tricky time with employment because of inflexible recruitment processes, like your interview that you have to kind of think about your answers, respond to them verbally and in real time. Your sensory environments that are incredibly overwhelming in your workplaces and not being accommodated and not being understood in terms of what your needs are in the workplace. Really have to focus on those reasonable accommodations and not just on what skills autistic people need to be able to enter the workplace. In terms of shelters or housing, some people would want to live independently, but we also have to think about that some people would have to live with support. And that might not be, we're moving away from institutionalization in South Africa, but then people still need continuous support, some people, and it can be quite a big burden of care on the families if they have to support this person with disability lifelong. If they have, if the parents pass away, where will this person with a disability be taken care of? So we have to think about support within the communities then if we're going to move away from from institutionalization. Access about transport. The other day I went on a train ride for PRASA from the Soweto station to the inner city park station to see how accessible that is, and it's incredibly sensory overwhelming. I will not be using the train again. Um, Healthcare barriers, healthcare workers do not understand autism. They don't understand that autistic people communicate differently, that we have different health needs, that it can be a very overstimulating environment. And then the number one biggest thing outside of employment that I hear autistic adults say is that they're lonely. So a big thing that we have to consider is social inclusion, that there's stigma, social isolation, a lack of community. Sometimes autistic people are in schools where they can interact with other autistic people, but then when you're an adult, it's difficult to find that community with people that understand you and are similar to you. So I want us to think about environmental accommodations and understanding, like your reasonable accommodations, your sensory-friendly environments, your flexible routine, communication support, your universal design for learning in your tertiary institutions and primary, um, and secondary, encouraging more compassionate and informed responses from educators, from employers, from family members, from peers, challenging stigma by framing autistic behavior not as this pathologized thing, but a valid response to inaccessible environments. If an autistic person is having a meltdown in public, it might be because this environment is incredibly overstimulating in a sensory type of way. Then that's a response to environment. That's not a behavior that needs to be fixed. That's an environment that has failed this autistic person. I really feel strongly because I was diagnosed later in life, and when I was diagnosed, it just felt like the world opened up for me and all of the self-understanding opened up. So sometimes I see healthcare professionals think a diagnosis is to decide what type of medication we're going to give somebody, but there isn't really medication for autism. And instead, a diagnosis can give us the vocabulary to understand ourselves. It can help us create a strong autistic identity. It can help us self-advocate. It can help us with mental health and self-esteem because we feel validated, because we feel like we belong. It's not just us that's different and quote unquote strange, but there's a whole community of people that are like us there, and that's incredibly empowering. And it encourages self-compassion. I like the idea of thinking about an autism diagnosis is before you get one, then you feel like a broken horse. And then when you get the diagnosis, you realize that you're a perfectly fine zebra, that you are made exactly the way you need it to be. Um, and with that, I really feel strongly about community and belonging, that I have a support group for autistic adults. Um, that sometimes for autistic people, you can break that loneliness, you can break that isolation, feeling like you're not understood by connecting with other autistic people. And we need to create more opportunities for autistic people to connect with their peers. This again can foster that positive identity, and it can help us come together and advocate for what we need. It can help us move beyond isolation, but also we want non-autistic people to understand us better so they can understand us and accept us and integrate us into their communities. So we want people to shift away from the idea of pity and charity to right, respect, and inclusion. We want people to listen to autistic voices when we're considering transition, how to approach transition into adulthood. Okay. A lot of autistic people have strengths and contributions that they can make. Transition is often seen as a personal struggle. However, when barriers are removed, a lot of autistic people can thrive in their specific employment or their community relationships. Autistic people can make unique contributions, not because we are savants and have amazing skills, but just because we think differently and we experience the world differently. So those differences in and of itself can be a strength to hear from somebody that's experiencing the world differently. The neurodiversity movement and self-advocacy are an important part of removing barriers. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Larika. It was very interesting, lots of learning for us to do. And I especially like your idea of interdependence because, we always say, we want people to be independent and the interdependence actually makes a lot more sense. I mean, everybody, each one of us, we want to have that sense of belonging. And we can understand that not having that, really can affect you in your social life. Before we go on, thank you once again. Before we go on, can I please just ask that if you have any questions during the webinars, if you can use the chat box to type. Sekwandi, who is also going to be on the panel later with his assistant Mark, is a non-speaking autistic. And so he will need some time just to type up his questions so that Mark can convey those answers to us. So just bear that in mind, please. Our next speaker, thank you, Larika, if you can stop sharing. Awesome, thank you so much. Our next speaker is Nicolette Repepe, and she is the founder and the executive director of Autism Connect, which is an NPO, which she created for a safe and supportive environment for individuals with autism and also their families. And she began this journey because her son Tyler was diagnosed with nonverbal autism. And she then made the decision to start this organization and dedicate herself to this. Nicolette, let's hear your story.
Hello, everyone. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I am joined by Maneve, which is going to slot in towards the end. Thank you, Rashan, for the introduction and for being part of this panel today. First and foremost, I'm a mom. I'm Nicolette Repepe. I'm a mom to Tyler Repepe, a 21-year-old non-speaking autistic individual. Tyler celebrated his 21st last Saturday. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction on how Autism Connect started, and it's really just a personal journey that began when Tyler was diagnosed in 2007 at the tender age of 2.5 years old, back in 2007. As a non-speaking, we call it now non-speaking autistic individual, and back then there's been such a lot of education and awareness brought about over the years in terms of how we speak and what we say and the terminology we use. And yeah, thank you to especially Larika, that is the educational consultant from Autism SA, that is helping us along in this space. So my journeys are really personal. Back then, Tyler was diagnosed and there wasn't much support at the time. I am predominantly from the Mitchells Plains area. I'm in Cape Town. And traditionally, the traditional mainstream educare centers wasn't accommodating to support special needs children at the time. Like many parents, I was full with questions at the time, fears, and the determination to understand Tyler's unique journey and the way of how he experienced the world. The early years, I searched for environments. Like I said, there wasn't many options available at the time where Tyler could be supported and truly included and not just being a child that they had to manage. Um, what I found instead were very limited services, and Lareka also spoke about that earlier in her presentation, really fragmented support and very few spaces that saw the potential for autistic children, individuals, especially those who were your non-speaking children, individuals at the time. The experience really changed me. I had a normal job. My husband and Tyler's dad is no longer with us. He passed away just over 9 years ago. Um, I realized that there was nothing, there was such a lot of closed doors at the time, so much that it was really a struggle, and there wasn't much services available at the time. There were private services, but it came at a big cost. I realized that I wanted Tyler to have a place where you could learn, grow, and be accepted. Um, and a lot of the doors were closed, shut in our faces. And I had to take a leap of faith, and I went away and, just having to navigate the space, which I didn't know much of at the time, absolutely nothing. And at the time, the people I linked up with at the time was Autism South Africa. There were obviously different people in that space at the time, and there was just such a lot of things that you Googled and just researched, and that was all that there was at the time. And it was really daunting for me. Was I think it was Tyler was just 6 or 7. I took a leap of faith and I left my corporate job and started Autism Connect out of nothing, out of my little lounge out in Westridge in Mitchells Plain. And I see some of our current Autism Connect parents is joining us on this webinar. I'm glad you guys joined us. Autism Connect began with that small vision, a heart-led initiative to create a center where autistic children and young adults could be supported holistically with patience, understanding, structure, and dignity. Over time, what started as my mission as a mother to Tyler for my son became a shared purpose for many families walking similar paths. Today, Autism Connect stands as a community of hope and advocacy. A big component of the work that we do is the advocacy part, a space where differences are embraced, communication is supported in all its forms, and every individual is encouraged to reach their full potential. And when we talk about adulthood and the pathways to independence and support, which it hit me out of nowhere when I realized Tyler's turning 18. Tyler eventually got into school at the age of 12 years old. He was with Autism Connect for a few years before then, and he started at one of our autism units out in Mitchells Plain at the Beacon Elson School. During that period, the school started putting up autism units, and Tyler eventually got accepted into Beacon Elson School at the tender age of 12 years old. and just having to navigate life. And in between, there were really big struggles. There were struggles of being a single mom. And some of the people on this webinar are probably single parents. Tyler's dad passed away during all this time that I had to navigate just everything, just life in itself, and managing and supporting my son. I have a daughter. Tyler's got an older sister, and just having to support her. And that is a topic for another time, because to have a child, an autistic child or any special needs, it really takes a lot out of a family and how it impacts the family holistically. And it really impacted us so much. Jeremy got sick, and he subsequently passed away a couple of years ago. And Tyler was, when the year he turned 18, I realized, like, what am I going to do after 18? We have the Early Learning Center where Tyler graduated from, and we have our young children starting from when they are diagnosed, parents looking for placement. And a lot of our referrals comes through your Red Cross Hospital, Tygerberg, neurodevelopmental clinics, and your one of the doctors that I know, and she was also the doctor that diagnosed Tyler back in 2007, was Dr. Schlegel. So quite a few of our referrals comes through that practice. And turning 18 was really a year of, sure, what do we do now? And it's a milestone for many, for us as parents, filled with the excitement and a lot of uncertainty for any young person. For autistic individuals and their family, this stage often comes with even more questions. The questions we initially had when our children were diagnosed, like where, what now, where, we sit in with the same questions. What happens after school? Where do we go from here? And what support is out there for autistic children, or just special needs in general? Well, I have, or our children have, moving into adulthood. That's what today's discussion, like I said, is unlocking adulthood and transitioning into adulthood. Like I mentioned earlier, Tyler is now a 21-year-old. He's an adult. Adulthood doesn't look the same for everyone, and that's the beauty of our neurodiverse community. For some autistic individuals, independence may mean entering the workforce, and Loreka spoke about interdependence, which is an independence and what that looks like and what the difference is. Living semi-independently or furthering the education. In my personal journey, Tyler needs significant support. He's not at a place yet, and I say yet, that he is able to live fully independently. What do we do? What is our role as caregivers, as support services for our community? For others, it might mean continuing to build life skills. That is what our skill center is about. Munir is going to touch on that. Communication and self-regulation, with ongoing support from caregivers and our professionals that works in this space. The key is recognizing that independence is not absence of support. It's about creating the right kind of support that allows each individual to thrive in their own way. What is currently out there? Yes, when school ends, and I want to just mention after the year Tyler was in his final year of school, I connected with a life coach, and she specialized working with young autistic individuals exiting the school space. and because she had a daughter, and she was 21 at the time. And I must say that really helped me. It helped me to just understand, transitioning from school into adulthood, and what that looks like. And that really is what started the Autism Connect Skills and Support Center. And there's still many, there's gaps there. The reality is that there aren't many of those type of support services for our autistic individuals or the community, that is really accessible. And there's a lot that we can still latch on there, but I don't want to lose focus. But there's Manev's going to share on that. There are options, supports are available, and it can look very different depending on each individual's levels of needs and support. There's for individuals with higher support needs, and that is predominantly the clients that we work with at Autism Connect. We focus on life skills, communication, and daily routines, supported employment initiatives. There's structured workplaces with on-site coaching, also part of the work that we do. Residential and supported living services to provide assistance with personal care, community access, and household management. And like I said, there's a lot that we can share on that, which Manev will take you through towards the end. We do offer therapeutic support as well. We work closely with our occupational therapists, ongoing access to occupational therapy, speech therapy, and behavioral support remains still essential. Of course, with individuals with lower or moderate support needs, opportunities to learn practical trades such as IT, hospitality, and other work-related skills. Further education, of course, will look like colleges that they can be integrated into, training institutions that offers inclusive programs or accommodation, coaching on workplace expectations, social interactions, and self-advocacy. It's a big component of what we do. Today, our young adults, Fridays is such a big thing in our space. They love Fridays because that's their social days, and they do various activities on a Friday. We work with, we provide guidance around budgeting, transportation, and just managing oneself, just with everyday life. I'm gonna hand over to Manev, and part of what the consultancy. So I wear many hats. First and foremost, I am a mom to Tyler, which takes up significantly. He's taken over my world, and I wouldn't want it any different. Over the past 13, 14 years that I've immersed myself into this space, I've really grown as a person, and just the support and the connections that's made over the years. Nicolette Pepe Consulting, independent consulting services, is really just that channel that supports parents individually, offering that one-on-one support to autistic or to the neurodiverse family, especially newly diagnosed children, where they just don't know what to do. And everything I do is really out of personal experience, and it's really just my heartbeat, and it's my passion to share that experience, because I know what it's like when you are when you're in that space and you don't know where to go and what to do, what is next. And that is what gets me up every day. And part of that is just an independent support that I do render to the community outside. I am The consultancy exists because of that need to support parents, to support families, just to navigate the space that you find quite daunting. Schooling, where do I go? What do I do? Offering one-on-one support to families. If so, it's a whole host of support needs that we are offering. Parent support guidance. I am a certified um, cognitive life coach and coaching in autism specific strategies and methodologies. And if people are looking for a space for their children to go from newly diagnosed to families where young adults are exiting the formal schooling system, that is how the consultancy can channel through to Autism Connect. And yes, we are in collaboration with many like-minded organizations that also render support. I do get a lot of calls literally every day or emails. Nicolette, where do I go? How do I do this? You know, and that is a support that the consultancy offers independently. Now, my details will be on the screen, and it is also shared with Roshan. So I'm going to hand over to Manib. Manib is our program manager at Autism Connect, and he heads up all our programs for our early learning center, and he's going to delve into the how the support looks like, how we do it, and he works with the young adults at the Autism Connect Skills Center. Over to you, Manib.
Good
Thank you,
afternoon,
Manib.
everyone.
Just bear in mind we don't have too much time. I know Nicola can probably go on for hours and hours and hours talking about the story, but
Yeah, I
we
was
just
very mindful of the time.
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So, as Nicolette mentioned, with the Autism Connect Skills and Coaching Center, I wish to reiterate just what Loretta mentioned about moving from a space of independence to interdependence, where what does support look like for school leavers that reach the age of 18? What does life look like to them or for them after they've left the more early intervention programs or schooling, your special needs schooling stages? And with the Autism Connect Skills and Coaching Center, what we try to do is we just try to flip it around compared to what Loretta mentioned. We try to move from interdependence, where there is that looking to external parties for support, to moving to a stage where you are now independent. And at Autism Connect, we obviously realized that this transition stage was where most families felt that they were most uncertain, not supported in, as Nicolette mentioned. And so, in collaboration with the Nicolette Repepi Consulting Services, we look at the most vulnerable members of society and we say, listen, after you've reached a particular age, what happens then? And so, our program focuses on key areas. It is life skills development, where we cover personal care, daily routines, and communication, which we find, as Nicolette mentioned, a lot of the young adults that we cater for are your non-speaking, high support need autistic individuals. And so part of that is still looking at personal care and the life skills aspect of it. And then also vocational skills training. We currently cater for in the areas of IT, hospitality, woodworking, and then also art therapy. So the beautiful art that we have hanging behind us is what some of our young adults have done. And they will also be participating in an art exhibition
with Autism Western Cape.
Autism Western Cape on the 15th of November. And that is something we are looking forward to because they've taken up a lot of time to really hone in on the crafts and the skills that they do have. We also have some woodwork activities and products that we do sell to the public, the young adults that we cater for service. Also manage a thrift store on
Yeah.
a Tuesday, Thursday, and every alternative Saturday. And we've now collaborated with another organization within the Mitchell's Plain vicinity, Art Labs, where we'll be going to host our thrift store on a Thursday.
Mm.
We also focus on the health and physical development aspect with an on-site sports coach that takes our young adults through a rigorous gross motor development routine
Mm.
where he focuses on that specific needs and preferences of our young adults. Each of our young adults also have an individualized life plan. So we've moved from the individualized educational development plan to a life plan because these are young autistic individuals that would need to become independent one day, and we operate the space in such a way that we teach them to become independent from managing their own bank accounts to managing working with their cards in stores. So as Nicolette mentioned, most of our Friday social events either include going to stores and repurchasing a list of items, or it is social events like hiking that we did today. So there's quite a bit that our young adults cover on a Friday as well as during the week. I also want to reaffirm just what Loretta had mentioned about what disability justice looks like. And we know that for our young adults, true adulthood is not defined by a checklist of abilities, but it's about having the dignity of choice. And Nicolette, the one thing she always mentions is about presuming competence. If you don't presume competence, then you are ultimately deciding how these young adults, how their lives should go. But when you make them active participants in taking charge of their lives, in making decisions, in being able to tell you whether it is through an AAC device, whether it is through a visual schedule, whether it is through, still some of our young adults use the Makaton signs, they have the freedom of choice to decide what it is that they would like, what it is that their preferences are or are not. And at Autism Connect, we believe that regardless of communication style or the level of support, we know that each one of our young adults deserves the opportunity to make meaningful choices. And we do cater for autistic individuals within the Mitchell's Plain vicinity, but we've also obviously branched out. And when I say obviously, it is not always known, but we've branched out to other areas as well. And our program focuses on motivating our young adults to live independently and to get to a place where they are able to do things through choice, that are self-sustaining, that have also their preferences, and that is important to us. And in closing, I would like to just remind the autistic individuals here today that your journey doesn't stop at 18. It's only the beginning. And as Nicolette has said, we do have some of our parents on the call today that are still at our early learning center, and they are well aware of the programs that we offer after school leaving age. And we've come alongside them to support them, and they know that there are many doors awaiting to be opened, pathways that lead to confidence, contribution, and connection. And also, as Nicolette mentioned, to the families and the professionals here today, I urge you to continue to build bridges together in collaboration that celebrate growth at every pace, honor communication in whichever style it is and in any form, and let's redefine what the term dependence and even interdependence looks like. Because adulthood for every individual, autistic individual, deserves to be unlocked with understanding, patience, and possibility. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Munib. Now we all know where we can send everybody that's going to be referring a lot of people to you now that we know what to do. I'm just mindful of the time, and so I want to introduce Zakwande. who is very passionate and is an advocate for non-speaking autistic individuals. He's the founder and the president of the Zekwande Matenjwa Foundation, which is a non-profit organization dedicated to promoting the rights and well-being of non-speaking autistics in South Africa. He himself uses a letterboard, and he is accompanied by Mark, who is his assistant. Thank you so much, Zekwande and Mark.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Yeah, so Zekwande is to my left here. He is the president of the Zekwande Foundation, and he is a non-speaking autistic individual that communicates by pointing to a letterboard like this. At the beginning of the talks, as soon as we logged in, he started spelling. I just checked in with him and checked how he's doing. And he then asked me to read something. He said, I want to say something to everyone. And so while the other speakers were busy, he was spelling out over 2 pages worth of his speech. And so I'm just going to take some time quickly just to read out what he took the time to spell. I want to say something to everyone. Hello all. My name is Zekwande Matenjwa. We are all here for different reasons, but I ask that each of us keep an open mind and heart. Dedicated people make things like this happen. I want to thank you all for being here. I'm glad to champion the cause of interdependence. Eastern cultures have good models of interdependence. How hard is it to model our homes, communities, and schools after successful examples? I want to tell you all that I, for one, have high support needs and always will need help in some capacity. I am having more and more exposure to the world and gaining more and more freedom. Not even I want to think about how independent I can get. I need support to access my rights, and I'm not ashamed for that. I have great support and help. Don't have an army of helpers yet, but the tidal wave of change is growing. I am doing my part. That is all I ask of all of you. Be part of the change and lead with love. I thank you all for your time.
That's awesome, Zekwande. I agree with you. We all want to be loved and have that sense of belonging. I 100% agree. Thank you for that. If I see if you don't have anything else, Zekwande, there's a question here, and I think that all three of you maybe have a different take on it. But it says, thank you so much for the talk. What are some of the practical ways that the community around autistic people can be more helpful? For example, that we wanted to include a 4-year-old in a birthday party, but they get so overwhelmed with crowds. Also, I wanted to give my friend a break and babysit, but her son refused to get into the house because it was so new for him, and they ended up leaving after 5 minutes. So if Lareka and Nicolette can answer that, can take a first chance to answer that, and then Zekwande can have some time to type up his answer.
Thank you, Maga. Yes, so the reason why I didn't give very particular practical advice is because we can't cover the whole scope of autism in this time slot. So I'd recommend for people to go and find out more about autism, go and have a look at Autism South Africa's website. We have a practical guide booklet, but we also have a booklet on the sensory needs of autistic people. So yes, something like a birthday party is very sensory overwhelming because there's sounds and there's people singing and there's colors and balloons popping and so many sensory things that's happening, and it's outside of your routine. So I know there was one little autistic girl that got a meltdown not because of the sensory aspects of her birthday, but because it was a surprise and that disrupted her routine. Autistic people like routine. So maybe a birthday party is going to look like something completely different. Maybe you're not going to have your bright colors. Maybe you're not going to have your singing. Maybe you're not going to invite a lot of people. Maybe the autistic person likes dinosaurs and you're going to take them to, or animals, you're going to take them to the zoo, but with noise cancelling headphones, or you're going to participate in their special interest. You're going to go outside and go find rocks with them, whatever they enjoy doing. A birthday party is going to have to look like what they enjoy doing. We're going to have to reframe these traditional things. And I know it can be quite tricky for parents because they want to celebrate these milestones in ways we traditionally consider them to be celebrated. But we're going to have to rethink things. We're going to have to think about a birthday party is supposed to be nice. So what is nice to this autistic person and what is not? The same with babysitting. When I've declined invitations to somebody's house because I'm not ready to be in an environment that smells new. Because if you walk into a new house, it's a whole new environment with new smells and new visual input and new social rules and things like that to consider. So maybe the babysitting has to happen in a familiar environment. You go to that house and babysit there, and mom goes out and goes and does something nice outside of the house. My recommendation is always when an autistic person does something, not to think that they're being difficult. There's often very big reasons as to why we're doing things. Go and explore and discover those reasons and work with us, not against us. Work with what we're telling you, reinvent how things can be done. Be creative, problem solve, and always be open to learning new things about autism. Yes. Nicolette?
I think there's not much I can say. I think Loreka has explained the very, very basics to do. And I put that up. Here's the practical guide. So a lot of these takeaways we do. The consulting, so personally, these are the type of things that I generally support with and work with individual parents or families, because it's a space that I needed to navigate over time and what is going to work for our children, because not all our children can tolerate being in those type of environments. So to Cynthia, definitely, just take some of that advice from what Loreka has shared. Feel free to also make contact with us. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, Loreka mentioned this right at the start. It's also about communication. And sometimes communication will look differently. Don't assume that if it's a 4-year-old, they'd want to even attend a birthday party because of that sensory support or just adjustments that needs to be made. So communication is important. They would oftentimes communicate that they are not interested, that they do not like a particular home or a particular person. So it is really up to us to identify what are the patterns outside? And this is something Nicolette and I had a conversation about. What are the patterns that we pick up out? What are the differences that we pick up outside of the patterns of when a child stims? Because oftentimes through the stimming, that self-regulatory behavior, they'll normally indicate when something is not comfortable, when they are not comfortable with someone, something, and use space. So we also have to pick up on those cues to see, okay, this might not be something that they are interested in. Don't assume that because the child is 4 years old, they want to be at a birthday party. And you need to communicate. And what we do at our early learning center is that we had one of our kids that had to go to the dentist, and we had to prepare him 2 weeks in advance with videos, social stories, imitating a dentist's office, and then talking him through it.
And we model it, yeah.
And you model it. to prepare them. So you try to run a schedule so that you don't just decide on events. And Lareka can obviously is much more of an expert on this, deciding on things on a whim and saying tomorrow we're heading to a birthday party. That doesn't give anyone much time to decide whether or not I'm interested or not to participate in something. So it is about communication, looking at communication styles, what that response is, reading that social cues and taking it from.
Yeah. That's quite a lot of information. Thank you. It's something that we must all keep in mind, especially if we have clients or patients coming to us. Would you like to add anything, Zikwande?
Zaquande spelled, I would need to meet the child to get a better idea. Hard to know for sure. It could be emotional or sensory overload. And I know working with Zaquande that there are times where even positive, happy emotions can overwhelm him to the point where it makes it impossible for him to, partake in certain activities just because. So even as everybody has said already, don't assume just because it looks like they don't want to participate or that they're backing away from participating, that they don't want to participate. It could just be that it's an overwhelmed sensory or emotional state for them, and but it's hard.
There's just one more question. Thank you, everybody, for a very interesting, excellent talks. How can we help boost the powerful message of empowering autistic adults by changing the narrative and educating the general public and probably also policymakers who really do not understand the complexities of autism?
Are you happy for me to answer?
Yeah?
I know when I studied occupational therapy, we were always told that people with the conditions are the experts in their conditions. And as an autistic person, I don't like dissonance. I don't like when people say one thing and do something else. And it seemed like they said that one thing, but then healthcare professionals and other people weren't following that at all. And it was very kind of frustrating for me. And later I figured out that I'm autistic, and that's why people's actions and words not matching frustrates me so much. Um, really listen to autistic people. They really are the experts. So when you want to learn about autism, go and find out what autistic people have to say about autism. When you're unsure about an approach or how to support an autistic person, go find out from autistic people and diverse autistic people. You can see you have me and Zakwande, and we don't have the same needs, and we don't look the same way, and we don't communicate the same way, and we have overlapping experiences and different experiences. Listen to your non-speaking autistic people, listen to your higher support needs autistic people, listen to autistic people from all different backgrounds. Really, and then provide platforms for like this for autistic people to share our inputs as much as possible. Really, like act on it that we believe that people are the experts on their conditions. I think I'm seeing Zakwande's spelling. I think Nicolette's going to answer, but also I'm interested to hear what Zakwande has to say.
So, Roshan, I just wanted to add, and then maybe chip in on the part. I do
Okay.
think that there are quite a number of organizations that are currently in existence and advocates in their private capacity. We work very
Yes.
closely with Carmen Walker is on the call
From
from
Autism So.
Autism So What, that are advocates and policymakers even. We work closely. We form part of the organization, the Western Cape Forum for Intellectual Disability. And these are organizations. Nicolette is part of the Autism South Africa board, and these are organizations that do focus on advocacy. They focus on educating the general public about autistic individuals, young adults specifically, that do not particularly, they reach 18 and then there's nothing to look forward to. And so I think it's just about reaching out, finding these spaces that can support you through individuals like the Nicolette Repepe Consulting Services. These are places that you can reach out to find that support, to be a voice. And like Leraika said, the best person to get the advice from is the person that's living through it.
Yeah.
First-hand experience, so that you don't have a second-hand a testimony from someone who's never lived through it, someone that's never had to experience it, someone that's never had to face any difficulties. So you have these structures in place that do advocate, that do shift the narrative of the community at large about how autistic individuals matter. And a theme that we've focused on with Autism South Africa is that autistic voices matter. And that is important to us. We want to constantly drive that home, that autistic voices matter.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Manib. And of course, Leraika. Sekwandi, would you like to add anything before we wrap up? While Sekwandi is still typing a message, I'd just like to welcome Jenny Carroll, who is on the committee that organized the international collaboration.
Nothing about us without us. Zekwande spelled out nothing about us without us. And on the board here, you can see there is some punctuation, and he actually put 3 exclamation points.
Agreed. We feel strongly. Yeah.
At the end of it. It must always be followed, not just when convenient. So,
Right, everybody, you heard that now. Nothing without us. Nothing about us without us.
nothing about us without us.
Awesome.
Perfect
Awesome.
final message, I think. Thank you. And
Perfect,
thank you
yes.
for thank you for the welcome, Rathan. It's really great to be here.
In all spheres, in research, in implementation, in design.
Thank you so much. I think we've lost him there. But I think the message from Heather Thompson is perfect to just sum this up. Thank you all for very inspiring messages and for challenging us to think deeply about how to improve ways of inclusion to each person. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you for your time. And thank you to Jenny for joining us from the IAACD. Please enjoy your evening and have a lovely weekend.